All right, if everybody could take their seat, we can get started. Fits my color. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the March Long Island Railroad Committee meeting. Are there any public comments?
Chairman, we have two public speakers signed up to speak.
Okay.
Murray Bowden, followed by, and I apologize if I mispronounced the name, John Micro. I'd ask the speakers to please adhere to the 2-minute time limit and to keep to topics on the agenda for the meeting. And the first public speaker we have is Mr. Murray Bowden.
Good morning.
The next speaker is John Micro.
Yeah, it's actually John Michno, but anyway, dear Mr. Chairman and board members, I am pleased to see so many great construction projects going on across the Long Island Railroad main line. But I am here because I feel the performance by the management, Mr. Nowakowski in particular, has been abysmal. It has been almost a weekly occurrence when there is some service disruption on the Long Island Railroad main line, the busiest part of the railroad that carries the Ronkonkoma, Port Jeff, and Oyster Bay branches. Many can no longer rely on the Long Island Railroad to get to places on time, if at all. It just seems like the Babylon branch always gets the most service, the most attention, and rarely has catastrophic shutdowns like the main line. I've noticed this shift in the months and years since Patrick Nowakowski replaced Helena Williams as Long Island Railroad president. New concrete ties out to Merrick, while wood ties rot on the Huntington and Ronkonkoma branches, which are always plagued by preventable issues such as broken rails, signal problems, and poorly maintained trackside utilities. And while things happen that are out of the railroad's control, it is how they are handled that make matters so much worse. When service is shut down for hours, why are there no buses provided? Consider all the hundreds of dollars every year many Long Islanders send to the MTA, and how ridiculous it is that the MTA cannot send some of the thousands of buses it owns to help us out. And now, when there's planned work, you have the goal to put riders on school buses, which are not meant to transport adults. And getting to that planned work for the next 3 weekends, it seems that once again, only the Babylon branch gets to keep most of its service. It's hard not to see the favoritism by the railroad toward this mostly homogeneously white-collar, upper-income branch. You are violating Title VI laws. And I live in Mineola, which is one of the busiest stations on the railroad, yet we are treated poorly in this service change. Our service is cut in half, and no one seems to have the logic to have Ronkonkoma trains stop at Mineola when Huntington service is reduced to hourly. I do not want to ramble on. You need to do right by all Long Island Railroad riders and replace Mr. Nowakowski with someone who will look out for every part of the railroad, not just the Babylon branch. And I have photos printed, if you want to see them, of some of the poor conditions on the main line.
Thank you very much. You can give it to the gentleman. We will take a look. Thank you very much. Any other public comments?
That concludes our list of registered speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. The minutes of the February 20th meeting were in the book. Are there any changes to the minutes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve. Second, all in favor? Aye. Pat, are there any changes to the work plan?
No changes to the work plan.
No changes to the work plan, and why don't we go right into your report? Thank you.
Thank you, Mitch. Good morning, Commissioners. Want to follow up with discussions we've had at the last two committee meetings concerning, first in January, we talked about the problems we had in December in January. Last month, we talked a little bit about the goals we were going after with the introduction of our improvement plan. And this week, we'd like to give you some more specifics on the improvement plan. I have placed, hopefully at everybody, in front of everybody, a list of elements, activities that we included in our performance improvement plan. The sheets are marked draft because we are still researching what some of the activities will take in terms of timelines and finances to support them. So at this point in time, it is still a work in progress. But that said, it was always our intention that this would be a living, breathing document. That is, if we find additional things out, this was not to be a be-all to end-all list. It's a list that we are currently working on, but we are certainly endeavoring to constantly add to that list and make whatever changes are discovered needing to be done throughout the system. Again, our goals are very much along the lines of, one, what can we do to prevent some of these incidents that have occurred? We've talked a lot about the impact that weather has on our operations. And as I said, it's our goal and our responsibility, and what we're endeavoring to do is to harden the system against the impact that these types of events have caused us. In addition to that, we've talked a bit about quicker response. That is, how can we more quickly respond and restore service when these events occur? And finally, on the communication, what can we do to better communicate with our customers, both at three locations, really. One is when they are on board our trains, two, when they're in our stations, and three, when they are in neither of those places, but in their place of business or at their home or whatever. How can we get out alerts to people when things occur in the system? So we're targeting all of those areas with what we've shared with you. And as we've talked about in the past, you know, some of those goals, particularly on the communication side, will involve us trying to get better information ourselves as concerning the performance of individual trains, but also trying to share what information we have directly with our customers, and that's a big part of the goal that we put out there. In terms of addressing response time and stuff like that, we are adding additional crews as part of this plan. The goal is that they will be able to respond more quickly when an incident occurs, and that we can more quickly restore service because of having additional resources staged at the right places, staged at the right time. We had an incident a couple Fridays ago where we had two incidents that occurred at two different places, and one of them was a car on the tracks at Mineola, and we were able to respond more quickly because we had a crew right there able to respond, and it was a crew that would not have been there if we had not made those changes. So we are trying to do that. Exactly what locations they're needed is not always known, and traveling at rush hour is not the easiest thing to do on the island, but we're trying to pick the most critical spots and have people available to respond to those locations. In terms of hardening, we've put a number of items on there. As you know, one of the things that has gotten us so far this month has been poles down. We've been working very closely with PSE&G, and we are making progress with them on trying to harden the system. And a lot of what they have, and you may have seen it in the pictures, are transmission lines that they utilize the railroad right-of-way to occupy with transmission lines that feed the entire island with power. And when one of those poles goes, it's a very large pole for one, but it's high tension lines that are carrying a great deal of current, and we need them to respond, and we have been working very closely with them. It's been a cooperative relationship, and they are working with us to address them. In terms of communications, one, I'm hoping that people are starting to notice some improvements, some changes in terms of our communications. We have been very aggressive in terms of reaching out and communicating with people, both making sure on-board announcements are done, dealing at our station areas with what is happening and what's planned and what the impact is and how long we expect delays to last and those types of things. And we want to very much hear more from our customers. It was good we got some feedback today from a customer, and we are actually going to begin conducting some listening sessions. Long Island Railroad Listens. We're going to bring our top managers out. We're going to start this week. We're going to hold a series of 6 events over the next few weeks where we get particularly at Penn Station, Atlantic Terminal, some of the big locations, Jamaica, where our customers tend to be. We're going to have our managers there trying to answer questions, get feedback, get information. Get better understanding of what issues they see on the railroad. Obviously, we see a bunch of stuff, but they have many more eyes out there, and we want to get their eyes on what we're doing and get their feedback and their information. I've mentioned one of the other goals is we want to work very closely with the Commuter Council, and we're going to do that as well going forward. We've put this plan together. It is a plan that's probably going to cost in the order of $15 to $20 million per year in terms of the cost for the system. We're working very closely with headquarters in finalizing that cost because some of the activities actually need to be done with headquarters. In other words, when I talk about station signs, they're fed through our IT system, and IT is headquartered is in headquarters as opposed to the railroad. So they're a partner in this with us as well. In terms of that cost, it's expected that about 3/4 of that cost is going to be in additional resources in terms of additional labor throughout the system, and about 1/4 of it will be contracts, goods and services, and that type of stuff that we'll install on the system, whether it be like third rail heaters, or we talked about switch covers, those types of things. They would be the materials that we would go through. And that's about all I have to say on the activities. Chuck?
Questions or comments? Chuck?
2, if I may, Pat. At the Metro North Committee, one of the answers advanced to the question of why so many standees was that you can't add to the consist in many of these trains because they don't have enough cars. Do you have the same problem?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you and I have had this discussion, particularly for the Huntington branch, because we have limited storage capacity at Huntington. We would love to have all 12-car trains stored there, but the track is not long enough to have every train stored there at 12 cars. And one of our most overcrowded trains is a 10-car train out of Huntington. We know it, but we have no place to put the additional 2 cars in Huntington. And when I say that, somebody will say, well, just extend the track. Well, I can't just extend the track because, 1, we don't own the property, and 2, there's a grade crossing at the end of the storage track, and I can't have cars parked on a grade crossing that would block the local roadway. So it's complicated. In the case of Huntington, I can tell you we met as recently as 2 weeks ago with the new supervisor for the town and reinitiated discussions about trying to examine alternatives on what we can do. We have some money in our budget to try and do a study of what we can do, but I need the town to work with us in that endeavor. But as you know, we've gone through a number of years now where we've had increasing ridership. We are at what I'll call all-time highs, at least since the 1940s, and capacity on our system is an issue. You've heard me talk many times about not only the capacity on board the cars, but the capacity into Penn Station or through Jamaica or things like that. We have limited infrastructure capacity as well, so that causes us problems.
So my focus now, as you tell me, is that we have a fair number of additional standees all the time for basically a couple of reasons. One, a lack of cars is also the case in LIRR, correct?
Correct.
And number two, that in some areas such as Huntington, the municipality is not willing to step up to the plate so far.
No, I mean, they're willing. It's not an easy answer. It involves property acquisition, which goes into the town planning and all that other type of stuff. They're willing. They have not said no to anything. We've developed some alternatives and providing them. They're analyzing those alternatives and trying to figure out how they would impact their plans for their communities. So it needs to be a partnership.
Pat, the reason I'm doing this is the following. The MTA is a very easy target for either the media or the public at large to blame for these occurrences, standees and the like. But it seems to me that the problem goes far beyond Long Island Railroad or MTA. It involves the cooperation of the municipalities, of the counties, and the like. And unless and until they are prepared to cooperate, we're pretty much at a standstill.
Well, again, they are part of examining these problems, absolutely. But you know, I have not encountered one area at all where we don't have good relationships with those communities. They're tough decisions that have to be made, and you know, it's.
I understand that. But you and I have danced this dance for the past couple of years, and I'm not blaming you for it. But the public is concerned, the governor has expressed his concern over and over again about how to deal with this issue, and I just think it needs to get to the front of the table so that we can get it addressed. Let me deal with the second issue in the same regard. You have a large area of Long Island, howsoever you define large, where you have no direct communication system at the moment. And you're not able to communicate with the trains back and forth. Am I correct?
Well, we can communicate via radio, but we do not have the ability to see where trains are on the system, the centralized train control that I've talked about.
Where is that remedy to that problem in the plan that you have going forward?
We have funding in the 15 to 19 program to develop, and there's a picture of it right now, to develop a new facility and transition from our tower system into a theater type of system with centralized train control. We are, your timing was very good there. But it is, you know, it is a weakness. We have funding in the 15 to 19 program, and that funding is both to finish the room that we're constructing, but also a plan on how to transition, because we need to close towers, we need to move things around, we need to replace equipment, and we need to do that in a coordinated way throughout our system. So we've brought a consultant on board. They came on board sometime last year. Don't ask me what month it was off the top of my head. But we have a consultant on board, and they are assembling for us a transition plan into a centralized train control facility. And our plan is that that will be a major element for the Long Island Railroad in the 20 to 24 program.
Scott?
Yeah, Pat, I'm disappointed in this plan. I expected to come in and see a much more well thought out, well communicated plan. You have a lot of things in this paper, but it's hard for me to be able to even say what these are. I mean, this is, perception is a reality, and unfortunately our reality is really bad right now. We're at a historically poor performance for the Long Island Railroad, and if we can't communicate a well thought out, well communicated, easy to understand plan to our customers, they're not going to believe we're doing anything. So you may have a lot of good ideas here, but we need to take a step back and package it in a way that clearly highlights, what are we going to do? What are the three major categories? You mentioned them. You said hardening, response time, communication. What goes underneath of each of those? What's the timeline that we're going to go out and get things done? What are the expectations that our customers should ultimately have, and really display a sense of urgency? When I run a company, if I see someone come in with a list like this, that's not a plan. That's a list. That's a to-do list. You have to. We need a well thought out plan that can be easily communicated, that reflects the type of sense of urgency that this performance deserves.
Okay. The plan that's in front of you is broken down, the activities for each of those three categories that I talked about. And there's always a certain amount of overlap that goes with those, but they're broken down specifically. Each of those activities that are identified, we will report to this board every month on the progress. We will establish timelines, schedules for each and every item that's on that list. But measurement of completion of activities is more than just how many, we said we're going to install 10 widgets and we did it. That's not enough. We need to make sure that the activities that we've identified here and we're going to report to you as individual activities are moving the bar. Is on-time performance moving? Is number of broken rails reducing? Are the number of trees falling on our right-of-way reducing? So it needs to be a measure of that. But it also needs to be a measure of our customers' perception of what's going on in the system. Are we achieving the improvements that they're looking for in terms of our service? And they judge us based on our service, what their individual commutes have been like, what their experience has been on those lines. So we need to also measure whether or not we're moving the customer perception of the achievement of improvement in service. It's one thing to achieve the goal. It's something else to move the bar on-time performance or whatever other metrics we use. But it's a third to move the customer experience. And that's why we're trying to do some of these outreach events that we're talking about.
But you're hitting exactly my concern, right? As we all know, none of these solutions are silver bullet solutions that are going to change the customer's experience overnight. It takes time. And just like we see with the Subway Action Plan. So when things take time, you need to put together a simple report card that communicates to the customer the actions that we're taking in a way that they can understand. A list like this doesn't. No one's going to walk out of this meeting, no press, no follow-up is going to be able to say, wow, there's a plan in place. What you got to do is do similar to what was done with the Subway Action Plan. We're going to hire X number of people. We're going to focus on the top 10 issues that need hardening, that have been our greatest challenge along the way. We're starting the following 5 communication programs over the next month, and so that they can understand what we're doing, which then enables them to have a sense that recognize that we understand their challenge, and that while we're not going to see performance change overnight, we're actually taking steps that they actually recognize that we're taking. This doesn't do it. And that's why, and by the way, it's also a good management tool. So it's a way not only to manage internally, but to manage externally.
Yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. And, we obviously went and studied the Subway Action Plan when we did this. It is developed with a series of goals, much like this is. But the next piece of it is not just reporting to you in the individual goals, but also on a dashboard type thing of where are we moving the different metrics, the not how many widgets do we install, but what impact is that having on the service on our customers? It goes to simple things like ridership. I mean, our ridership goes down when we have these service issues. So continued ridership growth will be part of that. Customer satisfaction surveys. We intend to do a series of polling activities on a monthly basis to try and see if we're moving the needle by doing phone surveys of our customers and try to get feedback. So it's I laid out just the goals, but I didn't do it.
But you got to listen. I don't want to harp on this too much but I'm trying to help you here.
I understand.
I'm not trying to be critical.
Yeah,
what I'm saying is what you're saying is 100% correct. You need to do those metrics, but that's the follow-up of this, right? The first point right now is you have to lay out a plan that the public understands and can be put in, in sound bites that they can grasp and see and you can report on that isn't so complicated, right? No one's walking away from a public perception saying, okay, they get it. Long Island Railroad's going to solve my problem. They handed out these spreadsheets. You have to put together. It's part part marketing. That's why I said perception comes reality, right? And that you have to create that perception. We've seen that with the Subway Action Plan. We've identified in major ways things that we're doing, and then people go in, they see that they have the clock that tells the time, and they say, okay, something's getting done there, right? They see that there's more people, customer service people helping when there's a crisis. So it buys us patience as we're rolling this out. And so what I would ask you to do is go back and try to repackage this plan in that context that really displays the sense of urgency that the public expects to see from us and in ways that they can understand as we roll it out. And then I'm not saying don't do the other piece. I think the other piece is important in terms of measuring customer service, on-time performance, ridership, et cetera. But you got to start with letting them know we understand we have a major problem. We're at historically poor performance here. And so they need to realize that we recognize the challenge ahead of us and are doing everything we can in a way they understand it.
Okay.
Ira?
Yeah. I have a couple of questions about the specifics in this plan. I think this is very good. This is a meat and potatoes list of things that are going to be done that will result in increased on-time performance. That's what we're suggesting. That's what we're saying here. Correct? I mean, that's what we expect these actions to do that. And I think it'd be good to tell the passengers that we don't have to give them the whole list. I mean, this is for us and for MTA, but if you're going to put something in Train Talk, which everybody gets, and say these are the kinds of things we're doing to address the problems that you hear every day. And people hear every day when they're riding the railroad, oh, there's a signal problem. I mean, I've heard someone said, well, I'm sure there'll be a signal problem at Queens Village. They've heard that so many times. I'm sure they'd love to hear how that's being addressed. And on that, I noticed we're going to add but by 24/7 coverage on key locations for signal gangs. And it says we're not going to start that to July. I'm just wondering why that is.
Hiring signal people is...
Oh, we're hiring new people. We're not just... Okay, so we're going to hire more... Okay, no, I understand. Okay, but that's a key thing. People hear signal... I mean, that's what I hear back from some people. It's the most annoying thing because when they hear it's a problem in the East River tunnels or something, they understand that's Amtrak. Or someone got hit by a train or there's a block crossing. They don't... People know that's not the railroad's fault, but these other things are completely on our dime. The way we operate trains, a train fails, things like that, and they want to hear what happens. But I think, like the last Train Talk, I got a comment from one of my fellow Long Island Community Council members. It said that on-time performance in February was 92.3%. Now that's below goal. It didn't say that in Train Talk, so it made it sound as if, because people think 92.3, well, that sounds like a good number, right? Because when you were in school, 90 was good. Not for a railroad, 90% is bad, actually. But, maybe we should not be putting in Train Talk things that make it sound as if we're blowing our horn when people know that service was bad. I think that's a public perception thing I think we have to address. As far as this sheet goes, I think this is a good foundation. I think translating this and communicating with the passenger through something like Train Talk or through the things you mentioned is different and sort of summarizing them, I think would be the way to go. One last question. It also mentioned something about lightning strikes. I'm just wondering, you may not have it. I just wonder how big a problem that that is. I didn't realize that we had that many lightning strikes. You know, we want to harden our system against lightning strikes.
Yeah, and, different summers bring different levels of electrical storms that get us. And as I understand it, actually, this goes back about 5 years ago. We had a real bad summer, and we undertook a lot of activities to do that. And we obviously prioritized and did all the major locations, but we haven't hit all the locations. And I want to make sure that we get out there and get all the locations done and make sure they're all better equipped to deal with lightning when it does occur.
One last question about the M9. I think because the M9, we're relying on the M9 order so heavily at this point. I think it'd be good if monthly there's a summary update on that it's on schedule and that we're going to have all the M9s in place by December and the delivery. I mean, I guess it's listed in this list, but I think it's a critical element for this and also for Panacea train control, whatever that thing is. So. I think it'd be good to.
We're very much dependent on getting the M9s.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So it'd be good if at this committee we saw not an extensive report, but just if it does fall behind, that's a critical thing we should know.
Yeah, it's on the work plan a couple times a year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but every month, just something that we know that this, that nothing bad happened.
The first delivery of the new M9 says is June of this year.
And we're on schedule for that, correct?
Correct. We're actually having our test equipment will be here on the railroad first part of April. And we are testing, as we've noted before, in Colorado presently. That's some of the pictures that you'd seen that were up there. Those are actually up in Pueblo, Colorado.
Chuck, go ahead.
It's a follow-up, really, of Ira's question as well. According to the numbers, there are approximately 162 of the M3s now in service that will also be phased out at the end of the year. Am I right?
Yes.
And yet, on your plan, on line number 813, you plan on replacing only 60 of those. So you've got a built-in shortfall, haven't you?
Yeah, what I'll say is we probably kept more of the old ones because of their unreliability than we needed to. The total order is, it's not 60, it's more than 60.
The base order,
the
base order is 92, and we're in the process of exercising an option for 110. Over the years, we've touched on this, that the reliability of the M3 basically it's one thing to make the line with the equipment. It's the ability for that piece of equipment to run all day, and its service level is not there. So that's why we put in the number, what we're seeing on the schedule and stuff, to have 60 or 70 units in revenue service by year's end, because right now we're really solely dependent on the M7s. And we've shrunken their spare ratio down very small. That's really the workhorse that's getting the railroad through at this time.
But the math doesn't seem to work.
I guess the question he's asking is the issue. We're not. Well, let me phrase it this way. The plan is to replace the current M3s with the new M9s.
Yes.
The replacement doesn't happen until the M9 actually shows up.
That's correct. That's
so.
right.
So that I think is the issue.
And then
and on an ongoing basis, as more M9s come into play, more M3s are replaced.
But there follows from that point the fact that you have determined, as I understand it, not to equip any of the M3s with PTC or the like. If you are going to keep them beyond the anticipated date of the arrival of the M9s, so that you have at least a one-for-one exchange, you've got to get those and keep them up to date.
Yeah, I don't know if Craig's here, but I'll give you round numbers. We probably run about 70 M3s on a given day out of the 160, if your number's right, that we own. That said, we expect by the end of the year to have probably close to the 90 number delivered. So we will be able to replace all those that we run on a daily basis. And as Dave said, we have an option that we're exercising to supply more cars as well.
Let me make a suggestion to you. If it is not cost prohibitive, take a small number of the M3s that are in good shape and get them up to date so they can be there, because otherwise you cannot validly make, in my view, the argument, I don't have enough equipment.
We can look at it. Obviously, M3s have been made PTC equipped for Metro North, so the design is out there. But at this point in time, we do not believe we need to go down that road because we believe we're going to have enough of the M9s delivered.
All I'm trying to say to you is, if you don't do it, you foreclose yourself from the argument, I don't have enough equipment. That's all I'm saying.
Understood.
Anyone else on the action plan? I want to agree with Ira and Scott to some degree. I think this is an excellent start, an excellent opportunity to see everything that's going on. This is obviously for the board, for our usage, and rightly so. We have to see all the specific details. We have to approve the necessary resources. I think we do need to figure out how we play this, or play is not the correct term, how we present this to the writing public in a different fashion, because obviously they're not going to look at each of the individual items individually. They want to know, what's it going to see for their service and get their, and what their perception is. So I think this is an excellent piece for us, and then we need to see the piece for the writing public, which will be somewhat different than this piece. But as I said, I think this is a very good start, and we hope it will continue to be implemented in a quick manner so that we can see actual improvements, not the issue, as you said, of how many items were done, but what the items being done mean to on-time performance or service reliability or the other things that the passenger wants to see in that context. So it's a first step into a second step that I think we need to continue to harp on very closely.
And yeah, again, I understand what Scott's saying.
Yeah.
We need to communicate up front, and I didn't do a very good job of explaining that when I was going through it, but we do.
Okay.
Understood.
All right. Any other parts of your president's report?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. Safety?
Good morning. Our safety report can be found on page 141, and we are reporting on our safety performance through the end of January of this year. Our customer injuries are down. Our employee injuries are slightly up. Again, the main activities drivers for both are slips, trips, and falls. For employee injuries, soft tissue injuries continue to remain a challenge for us. At our April 3rd next focus meeting, we will talk more with our employees, engage more with our employees about preparing their bodies to work in this very physically demanding environment. In addition, I'd like to highlight that in the month of January, our partnership with the MTA Police, we reached over 8,000 participants in communities regarding being around our system and through our TRACS program. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Laurie on the safety report? Okay. Thank you, Laurie. If not, capital construction. Jano?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think everybody's aware that we're going to be giving a full report to CPOC in April, but on the East Side Access Project. But in the meantime, I want to keep the board and the committee current with some very current activities and issues. One piece of good news with respect to a major procurement, the so-called 57D procurement for track work, that is a new tracks and switches, and it's a predecessor contract for the final tunnel approach, which is a big milestone for us. But with respect to that track and switch contract, we had a favorable procurement outcome below the engineer's estimate. It's not a procurement that comes to the board for approval. It's a so-called IFB procurement where you approved the RFB, but it did have that positive outcome. And this is important because this work needs to be done for the final, as I said, the final tunnel approach to be completed. And that is, in that tunnel approach contract is, and it's an important point, the last major contract that Eastside Access is going to undertake. So we're headed in the right direction on at least this one thing. And there was a positive momentum on another major contract, so-called Tunnel A contract, which did all its excavation on time and completed the catenary on time. In the perennial good news and bad news episode that is part of Eastside Access, I venture, we are struggling with the news that the signaling experts at Long Island Railroad have come to the conclusion at sort of a late date that additional weekends are needed to test, to perform the full regimen of FRA testing for the so-called CIL cutover. This is the process of switching over from our old-fashioned signal system, our outdated relay system, to the microprocessor system. And when it's done, and it apparently is going to take some more weekends to test than the 6 we had been planning for a long time. But when it's done, it will benefit every Long Island Railroad train that comes through Harold. And this is an important point, that some of these major improvements that are coming online, and we hope and expect that they will benefit the ridership and service right away. But we are struggling to figure out how to offset this ruling by the signal professionals that additional weekends are required. We're trying to work it out in this regional scheduling process with Long Island Railroad, most important, but Amtrak as well. But in the meantime, this is creating some additional schedule risk, and this has been performed. I think that this planning has been extensive. It's gone on for years, and we have to figure out a way not to lose schedule based on it. One other benefit of this switch over to the modern signaling is that a train on any Long Island Railroad track will now be able to move into any East River tunnel, and that's a significant level of flexibility that's never existed before. And again, I emphasize, and I'm sure I'll be repetitive, this is something that will benefit ridership and operations from day one, even before we open Eastside Access a couple of years from now. So that's the status. We're struggling with this one issue. We have some good news on other fronts, and you'll have a full report next month.
Questions or comments? Chuck?
A quick suggestion. If you have a chance, take a look at page 108 of the book, and you will see an illustration of the transponder installation. It looks like it's on the right-of-way rather than in between the tracks. And my question is, as a matter of security of the equipment, is that sufficiently secure? I don't know if it is or it isn't, but you might take a good hard look.
Absolutely, and I will respond to the committee directly.
Thank you.
Yeah, Chuck, I assume you mean the PTC report? The PTC report, the transponders are part of the PTC system? Yeah, that's
Norman? Sorry.
Yeah, I had a question a couple meetings ago on how many parking spaces you was getting for, I think it was $84 million in the mainline third track. Did you ever get a number for me?
As I sit here, if you haven't gotten a response, I apologize, and we'll look after that today. If you haven't received a response, we'll get back to you.
Could you give us a quick update on third track, where that is at the moment?
All of the steps that needed to be taken right now are being taken. The principal activities are the preparation for the utilities, the utility relocations, setting up the office, planning out the elements of work, putting the teams in same location, establishing the schedule, which we are going through on an intense basis with the contractor, agreeing on the process for submittals, reviews by the railroad, and making sure that everyone understands how that process is going to work, how long each of these will take. And right now, we are fully on schedule with all of those. Partly in response to Mr. Brown's question, we've continued to dialogue with a number of the municipalities and localities about transit-oriented development plans and how it relates to the parking issue, the parking that was required by the EIS, but which we are trying to figure out how to execute in a way that is going to maximize opportunities for value capture and transit-oriented development. So those discussions are ongoing, and we'll give you current information when we have it.
So the fact that people don't see anything happening does not mean that nothing is happening. I think that's the preliminary work necessary to actually go out there and do work is ongoing.
Absolutely, and we always said that heavy construction was slated to begin at the towards the end of this year, but there will be some work going on. We're trying to accomplish some things before the trees get too much foliage back in place and so on and so on. So we're not wasting time and money. But heavy construction is slated to begin in the third or fourth quarter of this year.
Okay. Any other questions on capital construction? Okay. Chief, police report.
Good morning. System-wide, for the month of February, total major felonies were down by 8, 26 versus 18, a decrease of 31%. Year-to-date, system-wide, there were 49 crimes versus 43. That's up 6 or up 14%. Now, for the Long Island Railroad, for the month of February, we experienced our lowest recorded level of major felony ever, and that was 4 crimes. 2 felony assaults, one on a PO at Penn Station, and the other occurred out in Wyandanch. Both resulted in arrest by patrol. There were also 2 grand larcenies, one at Mineola and one at Babylon. Year to date, Long Island Railroad crime is down by 5, 16 versus 21, or down 24%. And there were no hate crimes reported this month. That concludes my report.
Any questions for the chief? If not, we hope that trend continues. That's a very, very good trend in that regard. Thank you, Chief. Action items. Pat, refund period?
Yeah, there's one action item, and some of you heard this during the Metro North Committee that we're here for that. This is an item that a state code was updated in December that requires it was geared, we believe, towards the Metro card, which currently had a 1-year refund policy, and they extended it to 2, but the language was such that it includes the railroads as well under the language. Currently, we only have a 60-day validation period for the ticket. You need to request a refund within that 60 days. So we're going to add 2 years to that 60 days for the refund period going forward, and that's what this action item is about, because we need to be in compliance.
Any questions on this item? I'll make a motion to approve. Second, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is approved. Information items.
Yeah, Lisa will do the first one.
Okay.
Good morning. On page 39 in your book, you'll see the Strategic Investments and Planning Studies Status Update. As you may have heard in Metro North, we do this every year. We do it in March, and we really do it to highlight in one place the initiatives, the planning studies, and the capital projects that are all going on throughout our system, and you can see how varied the work going out throughout our system is. I thought I would just, it's a matter of walking you through, just highlight a couple of items, and I'd be happy to take any other questions. In terms of the initiatives, you will see, I think Jana just gave us a nice update on mainline third track, mainline expansion. We did spend a great deal of time in 2017 completing the environmental review and doing the procurement, and this committee and this board was kind enough to pass that through. We now have that team working. We have our railroad forces working with them, and we're seeing, productive working relationships, and getting off on good ground on that third track project. And we will be, that is very, very critical to our future, to our reliability, and to our ability to provide both peak and off-peak and bidirectional service for our customers. The other item I wanted to highlight under initiatives is item number 10, because I sensed that there was some interest in transit-oriented development from the Metro North Committee. Long Island Railroad is the original transit-oriented development. We were built and Long Island filled in after us. So we put the T in TOD, and that has not stopped. And while Long Island is a very difficult place to develop dense housing and apartment buildings and walkable communities, I can tell you over the years that battle has turned, and we are seeing some very successful, very exciting new developments come up. And this is so very important to Long Island, to our growth, to our health, to keeping our young people here, to keeping our retirees here. So we're just thrilled to see that. We are always a participant in transit-oriented development, whether we are an active participant and there's some land swap that needs to be done, or whether we are reviewing EISs or commenting on planning work that's being done in a community. We are always helpful and eager to get in on the ground floor of any TOD, and we're just happy to see so much going on and to have so much to report on at this time. We talked about Wyandanch. That is probably one of the most prominent TODs going on. Both the town of Babylon and Suffolk County have shepherded this through, never wavered in their commitment, and we've been a partner with them. At that, we see a parking garage that's waiting for our East Side Access project to open and be filled with all the new customers that are coming. We see very successful housing development and additional phases on the way. It also happens to be the site of a very important investment to us in the double track. So not only is this exciting TOD going on, but we're putting more T into that community, because you will see 2 tracks going through Wyandanch. You'll see 2 platforms at Wyandanch. You'll see overpass to get from one side to the other. Really nice community amenities that have been lacking for quite a while. We have also partnered with the town of Babylon, taken over some of the grants that they had to build an actual new station building, and they had asked us to take it on, and since that's more of our expertise, and we're doing that as well. So I'm happy to say that it's a nice confluence of events, and you can really see the generation of change in Wyandanch. Another important point to point out is Hicksville, and Hicksville has just tremendous potential. It is the #1 line station on our system. We have the most customers at Hicksville, and being at the east end of the 3rd track corridor, we know that 40% of our customers, even if they're not getting on at Hicksville, they're traveling through Hicksville. And prior to this renovation, it looked very tired, very utilitarian, and now it's vibrant, it's bright, it's got great signage, it's got nice customer amenities for our customers to enjoy, as well as those traveling through say, hey, something's really happening here at Hicksville. And that really helps serve as a catalyst for the development. Now, Town of Oyster Bay is in a planning process. They've received some planning dollars that they're putting to good use. There's been an abundance of planning work over as much as 10 years' time, because everybody sort of knows that there could be a very exciting there. And, I think that this may be the time that, that gets to be successful and go forward. And we, of course, will be participating in that and happy to see that vibrancy coming to such an important station for us. Let's skip over to Ronkonkoma, another major, certainly our most major station in Suffolk County. A lot of parking at Ronkonkoma, and what we know about development is a lot of times that parking can be consolidated so that development can occur and introduce vibrancy to that station area and make it a place where people don't mind spending 15 minutes to wait for their next train, having opportunities to do. We know town of Brookhaven has development plans underway on the north side, and we're hopeful that the south side joins in and we can really make a whole place at Ronkonkoma Station. It has that built-in proximity to Long Island MacArthur Airport, and there's really wonderful, abundant opportunities to really cement that link. The link is there, and we have connecting services, but that link can be more prominent, especially as we finish some of our work and are able to provide more frequent service to and from Ronkonkoma during the weekdays. I would just end with Mineola, because we've seen such a profound change over the years in Mineola. Mineola really led the way for the acceptability of denser housing in the downtown, all around our train station. It's really wonderful to see. It's beautiful buildings, nice living arrangements. And the nice thing about Mineola, we have very frequent service there today. You can almost go any time of day without a schedule and not have to wait too long for a Long Island Railroad service in either direction. We also have the Mineola Intermodal Center right there at the Mineola station, making a transfer to bus service throughout Nassau County very convenient. So it becomes a nice link. If you live in the city, you have a job at Roosevelt Field, you can make that link very successfully and utilize it. It really is a model for multimodal service for our customers, and it's very well received. It's not new, but it's very well received to this day. I would turn your attention then to the next portion of our plan. And that's a summary of the capital project highlights that are going on by category. We talked a little bit already about the rolling stock. We have a lot of station projects going on at this time. You probably heard about the Wantua platform replacement. That is a nice new transformation of the Wantua station. Will look as nice or better than its neighbors in Seaford and Massapequa. We have another project coming online this year, the Flushing Main Street project, which is an elevator project, but that elevator and accessibility project is really changing the face of and the accessibility to this important and rising station in terms of ridership in all day parts. We talked a little bit about the double track project, and that project, as we heard earlier, is not without some pain because there's has to be some service impacts as we build it out, but we are building it out at a rapid rate. We expect to finish that project this year as well, and that is a long time coming since electrification opened in '87. So we are happy that that piece of the puzzle is being filled in, and that will certainly be great help as the third track gets filled in as well. So we really are on a good trajectory, I would say, having a double track completed, a third track underway. East Side Access is going great guns. So we are at the beginning of a transformation. That may be part of what frustrates a lot of our customers and ourselves, but it's the solutions are not far off in the future. They are now. They are being constructed. They are being there's contracts in place for them. So I think that is a great positive. And I think the last, one of the other things I would mention is our Shops and Yards project. We have a Morris Park diesel locomotive shop replacement project. And this is a project that is many, many years in the making. It seems to almost get itself up to being funded and implemented, and then economic downturn or things happen and it goes away. This project is the reason we have capital programs. It is to make sure that we can do the heavy repair and overhaul of our entire locomotive fleet, shoring up our ability to provide that service well into the future. Our last item is the network strategy study, and some of you are familiar with our original network strategy study, which has really paved the way for our service to Grand Central Terminal. We are looking at this future study, and it's starting in 2025. It's starting when we have East Side Access. It's starting when we have that third track, that double track. So that is a different type of future for us, and we're looking at all the different opportunities that will be there, and what will be the next most important, most impactful investment for the Long Island. And a lot of what we've learned over the past is that we're going to there are many alternative possibilities, and we really look forward to finding the best of them and working in partnership with those who want to see that investment.
Questions? Veronica?
Under the track section of the capital program highlights, with regards to the East River Tunnel rehab, it notes that no work was done at all in 2017 because of unable to maintain the planned outages due to some Amtrak work, et cetera. How has that impacted the timeline for this work if no work was done last year at all? I'm looking at page 53.
No work to place. Well, as we know, it was superseded by some of the more critical work that had to be done for the Amtrak state of good repair. We'll look at the timeline. Some of our, this happens periodically, and we have to reforecast out the timeline. But it does not mean we're not committed to do it. It just means that the limited resources that were available had to be rededicated elsewhere.
And for the work in 2017, was it because those weekend outages were clustered in such a way that they ended up overlapping with some of the work, or were they stretched out over the year?
I think it's a matter of resources, the resources to get the work done. There was really an all hands on deck sort of approach to the summer work, and that was very, prominent. And earlier in the year, we had the failures that needed, that needed attention at that time. So, again, important work, and it will get back on track.
But if I may, I mean, one of the things to bear in mind is obviously we need. The part of this is sequencing, right? We need the capacity, flexibility that Eastside Access will provide in order to take East River tunnels out of service. Now, the specifics of what's going on here are deeply affected by Amtrak's resource problems, their inability to support the outages that everybody agrees on after a lot of discussion. Even when the outages happen, Amtrak does not have the personnel, the different trades, especially electric traction power linemen, in order for work to get 100% of the work that's scheduled to get done. And it is a chronic issue. Last week, Chairman Loda convened a meeting with the chairman and CEO of Amtrak to discuss that, among other issues. It is a serious, serious problem. It has impeded Eastside Access for many years. You've been hearing about it, but as a newcomer to this, I cannot emphasize enough the impact that that one problem has and continues to have on the ability to get work done in all of these projects. The East River tunnels are just one of many, many projects that compete for Amtrak resources and to some extent for Long Island Railroad resources. And it's a severe issue. You should also understand that Amtrak is still in the process of designing the East River Tunnel renovation. So we ought to get back to you and the committee about the specifics of the question you've asked. But right now, there isn't a ton of work that Amtrak was prepared to do underway. They're still designing their East River Tunnel renovations at this point.
Ira?
Yeah, just a couple of questions. In the safety area, it's very extensive, and we've heard these efforts before in safety, but it would be good if we could, how much does New York and Atlantic, who operates on our property, actually participate in this or have a parallel program to any of these, including engineer training or anything like that? How much are they included, and are we sure their crews are trained as our crews?
In recent past, we have definitely enhanced our relationship and transparency with New York and Atlantic. And while New York and Atlantic, just to go specifically to one of your questions, does the training for their train and engine service, we actually at Long Island Railroad do the testing. So we have an objective third party. We will not allow them to operate on our territory until we have the level of confidence that they will operate in a way that's safe and abides by our rules. So in addition to having that level of objectivity, we also have regular meetings with New York and Atlantic to go over operations and changes, and so that level of cooperation and collaboration has significantly increased in the last year or so. And in addition, we also recently engaged with them. They are going to be implementing, in addition to a sleep apnea testing program, they're also going to be engaged in a confidential close call reporting program, which we support because obviously they operate over our territory and we want to understand how their train and engine service folks are experiencing our operations as well.
Thank you. You answered my question and my follow-up questions. I appreciate that. On regarding stations, two questions. One, I noticed Elmhurst is not in the list of that's supposed to be a new station under this capital program. We're still going ahead with that.
Right. We still have planning funds identified for that, but it's not an active. We have not started that work yet, and it's not actively under construction. So I wouldn't put it in this report.
Okay,
You'll see it in this report in future years for sure.
When are we going to start with the planning and the design?
I'd say later in the program, but we're getting closer later in the program.
All right. The other issue is accessibility. I would appreciate, I think the Transit's going to start doing that on all their procurements, have an accessibility section of, especially on station renovations. I think maybe we should go ahead with that too here. Know which stations are accessible, which aren't, and what we're doing to make them accessible. I think we need to do that going forward.
Right, we can do that. We have a high degree of accessibility. Some of
I know we do.
Stations are under construction are going to come into accessibility, and we have a finite number left, and we'll have to attend to those as well.
On the locomotive replacement, we're going to put out a contract to replace all the old locomotives, the ones we leased to New York Atlantic and our rescue locomotives. I saw that. Do we expect that would mean that New York Atlantic would no longer be running what they're running now? I mean, I know they purchased locomotives. I got an email about that. I mean, do we expect that they'll be using what we purchased?
The procurement that's going forward is the base contract is for Long Island Railroad locomotive, diesel locomotive replacements, and not those we use in passenger service, but those we use in work train service and rescue engines and stuff like that. So we're replacing, I think, 30–40% of our locomotives with this procurement. Dave, what's the right number?
Yeah, it'll be a little bit higher that we own.
Yeah, I think we're 12 or 13. We're going to replace.
12 is in the base order. What's happening on our part
We've
is
got 26 on the property.
yes. We're going to be looking at the out years of base for 12, and then two options or 8 more. We're actually going to shrink our fleet down on our engine size, and then the work engine platform that we're purchasing will be the same one applied to New York Atlantic.
On the locos, we're especially, I'm sorry.
There's a separate replacement program that's been ongoing for New York and Atlantic, and we've been getting funding, or they've been getting funding together. We've been getting funding for about one a year, and we keep hoping that program goes forward, and this contract is structured in a way to enable us to continue that program by just exercising an option in it and not having to rebid it and to go through another procurement.
All right, thank you. On the East Side Access special locomotives we have to get because the tunnels are small. I was just New York City Transit uses diesel locomotives. I was just wondering if we could piggyback on order they had or will have. I don't know where they are in that, but whether we even looked at that.
We are working on finalizing, our spec. One of the things that this is going to be an interesting, challenge on our part is it's going to have to be, a Tier 4. We're working very closely with East Side Access and our engineering folks. So we have some unique requirements that basically we're going to have to pull 1,000 tons from a dead stop without sliding backwards, 3% grade with about 0.5% super elevation. So we have been talking with a lot of people across the board about tractive effort and the ability to recover equipment of this size and magnitude in this environment.
It's just ordering a locomotive that's specially made is always, as you know, it winds up being a problem.
Well, we know because right now we're dealing with a lower profile because it's an MU environment, and it's a big concern on our part. They will be specialized, but again, that's just the physics of what we're dealing with in this operating environment. I'm taking this extremely serious, knowing what's at stake here whenever we do go underground.
Chuck?
Last year, I believe October, we approved a design-build contract for new fare payment system to Cubic. And we awarded it based on the numbers that were provided to us then. On page 50 is the following statement. Long Island Railroad and Metro North are contributing existing capital funds to the design phase of the project. No reference was made when we awarded the contract that capital funds would be added to the award or that we would be a participant in funding that project or that Cubic was getting a co-contributor. What happened?
The 15 to 19 program originally, when developed several years ago before the Cubic contract was awarded, both commuter rails were asked to appropriate $5 million in their 5-year capital programs in anticipation of the new fare payment project. So that had been put in place. We had set aside the money knowing that we would all become part of an MTA-wide initiative.
Why wasn't that mentioned when the procurement was before the board?
I don't have the staff summary in front of me. I'll look at it again. I'm surprised. You can send it. I believe it referenced the funding shares, but I'd have to look at the staff summary again.
Please do. it seems to me if there's an addition here, that has an impact in terms of making decisions.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the $5 million that each railroad had appropriated was in the original 15 to 19 program. After the contract was awarded, based on the actual response from the vendor, each entity was asked to adjust its appropriations for that amount, and that was reflected in the capital amendment.
Let me see if I understand what you just said. We awarded the contract to Cubic, correct? After we awarded the contract to Cubic, $5 million was contributed by us, or was it before?
No, I apologize if I misstated that. The original $5 million that both commuter rails had appropriated was in the original development of the 1519 program, well before the Cubic award.
Well, I think you better either look at that or you better look at the wording on page 50 of this agreement, of this document, because it suggests that after the event you gave them $5 million. I like that. I mean, I'd take $5 million any day too, and so would many of the other people who bid for contracts.
We'll look at the wording.
Mark, if you could come back and give the board an analysis of what happened and when it happened, that would be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you. Benny?
So, recognizing that we have an agreement with New York and Atlantic, are we beginning to possibly look down the road to see if we can take the freight railroad back, which we operated prior? Our organization has made that suggestion, and we feel that it could be in the tremendous advantage of the railroad if we take it back and train our own people and test our own people and maintain our own tracks in engineering to ensure that our two systems can, act side by side the way they once did. So maybe we could start looking into a long-term plan when our staffing can get built up and our engineering forces and our train crews can all live up to it. But why not now start thinking about the future to take it back?
At this point in time, we are in, I think, year 2 of a 10-year extension to the original contract. So that would be something that would be a little bit down the line before we would actively do something to actually do that. But that contract does have an expiration, I believe, in another about 8 years.
Yeah, so again, I mean, we have a lot of long-term projects here, and it would take time, but if we start looking at it now and planning for it now, we'd be more prepared rather than 2 years before the contract is up. I mean, just prior to this last agreement coming up, we were in no position to do so for obvious reasons. So if we start at least thinking about it now, it could help us, greatly down the road.
Okay.
Anyone else? Randy?
Yeah, on the suggestion about working with NJ Transit to purchase locomotives, to the best of my knowledge, and hasn't changed, they are no longer buying diesel locomotives. They're only buying very, very expensive dual-powered locomotives. They want to make it really easy for their employees. They only have one kind of a locomotive, and they cost like $17 million apiece.
Okay. We've been through that, right? We bought expensive dual-mode locomotives, and we've been through that already. Yes.
Theirs are for diesel and for overhead wire.
Yeah. Oh, well, ours are for diesel and third track. Or remember the conversation directly. Yes. Scott, you have something else? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to commend you for working with the municipalities on the transit-oriented developments. I think that, to your point, as the ones that are under development today come to life and people see the vibrancy and the demand for them, I think it's going to spark more and more municipalities to want to pursue similar type projects, which I think would be great for the system. Obviously, the system, it's got to be reliable, but in terms of having a customer base, et cetera. So I would encourage you to keep doing that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else on any of these items on this report? Okay. You want to move to any of the other information item reports?
The escalator report is in there. The track work program is in there. The PTC report, which is a follow-up to the presentation last month. The updated PTC report is in there. The customer satisfaction report is in there. I will comment on that is one of the metrics that we need to move the bar on going forward. It is something that is certainly reflective of the dissatisfaction our customers feel. We need to move the bar on.
Any comments on the customer satisfaction report? Obviously, it's not as good as we all hoped or would hope, but we can all hope that a number of the items that are being planned now will result in an increase in customer satisfaction, because that's the goal, is how satisfied are customers with the service we're providing. So there's nothing in there that was a surprise. I don't think a surprise to us or a surprise to management in that regard. So we will continue to use it as a focal point for going forward. Any other comments on any of those items? If not, procurements? You knew we'd get to you sooner or later.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Pally, board members. There are 4 items in this month's LIR procurement package in a total amount of $31.4 million. There are no items in the non-competitive section. 3 items in the competitive section in the amount of $21.5 million, and 1 item in the ratification section in the amount of $9.9 million. I'll walk you through the competitive items first. The first item is a request for MTA Board approval to award 2 competitively solicited 5-year miscellaneous service blanket contracts for environmental services for AB oil service and island pump and tank hazardous and non-hazardous waste removal and disposal system-wide. These are 5-year blanket order contracts. As items come online, each will be issued a task order, and based on the firm that solicits and responds to the most favorable terms to the railroad, a task order will be issued to that firm. The next item is a request to issue a contract modification in the amount of $3.1 million to LK Comstock to provide design and construction of all civil electrical support work required for 2 new motor generator buildings at Deer Park, Ronkonkoma, as well as similar work for a motor generator set at the Bethpage Grumman location. These are in support of the new second track on the mainline branch Phase 2. These will include upgraded signal motor generator capacity, will provide additional signal power to support the additional loads necessary to run multiple trains at one time through the new double track area, and will provide the necessary redundancies to all of the new signal components that will be installed under the new second track project. The last item in the competitive section is a request to award a competitively solicited negotiated design build contract to the firm Forte Construction in the amount of $13.4 million to complete the design and construction services for station renovation, including amenities at Northport Station, and to provide amenities at 5 additional station locations. The request to use the RFP method of procurement was brought to the board earlier in 2017. This is the second phase of that project. You awarded or approved the award of the first phase to the firm Sinalta Scalamandre for the first 8 stations earlier this year. This proposed contract award to Forte Construction for station improvements is part of the LIR's capital program and will improve the upgrade of the customer experience. The last item, which is an item in the ratification section, is a request pursuant to an emergency declaration for the LIR request board approval to ratify a contract to the firm Power Resources International, PRI, in an amount not to exceed $9.8 million. This is to provide 3 motor generator MG replacements along the LIR's new main line, second track corridor at Deer Park, Ronkonkoma, Bethpage, the Grumman location. Under this contract, PRI will provide 2 PLC-based 100 hertz frequency conversion MG systems and associated electrical equipment in prefabricated building structures at Deer Park, Ronkonkoma, and the Grumman location. The declaration of emergency was declared pursuant to the completion of the final signal design and cutover plan and power load study. which identified the need for increased 100 hertz power at these locations in order to prevent low voltage conditions that could result in potential damage to the effective electrical and signal equipment and impact reliability of service to LIR customers. The increased power would also increase LIR's operational flexibility, mitigate overcrowding, and the cancellation of trains if an operational issue occurs. Failure to provide the additional redundancies created by having mainline double track completed functional will result in a reduced level of service. Due to the long lead nature of the equipment, critical need, and small window of opportunity to install these units without adversely impacting the overall project delivery schedule, LIR conducted an informal competitive solicitation bidding process, reaching out to 3 qualified suppliers and asking them to submit quotes, bids for this project. A fully competitive bid would have added 4 to 6 months to the schedule and potentially impacted the full double track project completion schedule. Of the 3 vendors that we reached out to, the first, Myers, could not meet the aggressive schedule and declined to bid. Powell opted to propose as a subcontractor to PRI. PRI submitted a price that is 3% less than the engineer's estimate and therefore was deemed fair and reasonable. May I please have your vote on these procurements?
Any questions on any of these items? Chuck?
With respect to the last comment, may I respectfully suggest you speak with Stephen Plukchucky, because there is a way now to reduce the amount of time it will take between the initiation of any procurement and its completion by as much as 1/2 to 2/3. And your comment about the 4-month saving might have been obviated if the Long Island Railroad had started down the road that transit is now going. My question, if I may, is the following. Forte, the only Forte I can find on Long Island is a home builder. Is this a Long Island home builder doing the work?
No, that is not the case, sir.
Well, there are 2. There's one in Stafford, Virginia, another one in Eagle, Idaho. Where is Forte?
Forte is a New York State business. I do not know the exact location of the firm, but I can get back to you with that information.
I'd appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you. Ira?
Yeah, just another note on accessibility, the station contract on page 120, I think. Or the contract for stations, it said, I mean, look at the amenities at Long Island Railroad stations. I know Great Neck, I think, I don't know, Valley Stream is accessible. I'm not sure about it. If you could check the other ones. I know Bayside's not, and that would probably be an expensive thing to do. But although Northport is almost at ground level, it'd be good if they could look at I don't think that's listed as an accessible station. If they could look at this, if there's some way to make them accessible, I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alyssa, you'll come back with a report on those?
Yeah, we'll take a look at
Okay.
it, and if we can't add it here, we can always do it as an add-on in
Okay.
the next program.
Bayside's probably the more difficult one, I
Bayside,
think.
it would require
Because
next,
real,
because
full
of the
elevator.
open cut, it will require
Yeah.
more
Okay.
extensive work.
Any other questions on any of the procurements? If not, I will make a motion to approve. Second? Any question? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is approved. We have the monthly operating reports in the thing, because there are no MTACC procurements. We won't hear David's voice this month. What a shame. Sorry in that regard. David is always here. The operating reports for the month are in the book. Are there any questions on any of the operating reports? If not, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor? Thank you all very much.